But before we start, let me get rid of my freckles. Yeah, there we go.
That's the craziest thing.
It's such a good look for me.
It makes your eyebrows go away.
I don't even have eyebrows, right? So that's as good as they get. But all right.
Right. They're there when you turn that thing off. When you turn it on, it just
Yeah, I like having a rumor of eyebrows at least.
You go full Odo when you turn that thing on.
Odo, yeah, totally.
Evening, everybody. Welcome to What's on Joe Mind Special Edition 90. It seems like we should have more of these after 12 some years, but whatever. Special editions don't mean they aren't the same as they used to be. We used to just throw special editions out whenever we didn't have news. Now we try to use them more for spotlights. So 90 is where we're at. I'm your host, Mike Irizarry. With me, of course, here in the top row is the former head of marketing for the G.I. Joe brand at Hasbro. It's the Hot Show, Mark Weber.
There you go. Yeah, and being a former something at Hasbro seems to be going around. Right.
Your club got a lot bigger.
Yeah, a little shout out to those remaining and the honored fallen.
Yeah, we are recording this the day that went widespread. It had been trickling out in other places, and you kind of held out hope until it actually went, but it actually went today. And the man below us here in the all alone in the bottom row needs no introduction.
I don't? Cool.
Doesn't even get one, apparently.
I couldn't help myself. But that, of course, is stage of YouTube screen and motion picture. I don't know.
Sure. Okay. All those things.
YouTube star and ring general. Dan, Pixel Dan, in the house tonight.
Hey guys. Hey. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to do this with you guys.
Ring general. It's for as long as I've and it's really been a long time coming.
Really. It's been kind of fun doing so much Joe stuff recently, which I guess that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Why I'm here.
Dan's finally showing some interest in G.I. Joe. It's time to get him on the program.
Yeah.
We limit ourselves a little bit sometimes in that we only really deal with G.I. Joe on the program. Like Mark and I will talk pop culture, everything at a certain point, and Rob too. He's just slightly off camera tonight, but we'll talk about any of that stuff, not on the show, and sometimes it'll even leak onto the show. But we try not to make a show about that stuff because then we would just have a 6-hour show. So so it's nice that you finally started putting some material out there that we can overlap with and just kind of
give you a reason to
where people are like, oh, who is that? We have a lot of fans that only follow G.I. Joe, right? Maybe they don't know who you are. Maybe they're not.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to bring you on and look like a goobus in front of those people. We want to bring you on and make you look good in front of those people. But now we can talk about some stuff that you've done with the G.I. Joe hobby. So I feel like we after 12 and a half years, Dan, welcome to your What's on Joe Mind debut.
I love it. Well, yeah, thanks for having me, guys. This is awesome. This is awesome.
Oh goodness. So Dan, you are from the capital of America, Springfield, Illinois.
Yeah, believe it or not.
It's a nice little town.
I went to my one and only JoeCon the year that it was here in Springfield.
There we go.
That was the year that I met Mark. Actually, it was in Springfield.
Yep.
Oh wow.
Yep.
I
was running the booth.
That's amazing. So I was there. I went and filmed the booth and everything while I was there to put it up on my channel. That was weird for me in the sense that like Springfield doesn't get anything. Like, we don't get stuff like that.
Right.
So when we found out that JoeCon was coming here, I was like, you mean I can just like drive up the street and go to a convention? I don't ever get to do that. I'm usually flying to the East Coast or the West Coast to go to these shows. So that was one of those things where I was like, well, I have to go to JoeCon if it's in my hometown. And I went with mutual friends, Duvall and Dave. Actually, I tagged along with those guys. So shout out to them. And I had a really good weekend. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was cool.
It was, and everybody who hugged Dave Draper got a 0% discount on admission.
That's very, that sounds right. That sounds right.
When we do a community calendar bit on our program, and every time Toyman comes up, I say, if you hug Dave Draper, that's good for a 0% discount.
That's awesome.
So that's JoeCon fans had their opportunity back in 2016. Was it that year, Mark? I don't know.
I think so, yeah.
15.
You know, I can tell a fun story about that too, about JoeCon. So like, my day job office building is downtown in Springfield, so it's close to the convention center that JoeCon was held in, right? And so there was also a Starbucks over there. So it's pretty common for me and my coworkers to like walk to that Starbucks to get a coffee, like at some point during the day. So early in the Friday before JoeCon started, there was already people like mingling around outside the convention center. I think because picking up exclusives and stuff was going on. And I was at work, and me and a bunch of like coworkers from my regular day job walked over to the Starbucks. And as we're walking across, somebody yelled, "Pixel Dan?" And then like a little crowd of people came over to like talk to me and take pictures with me, while all of my like regular coworkers are just like, "Oh my God, like this, like we knew what you did, but we had no idea that this." So it was one of those weird moments where like, two of my worlds were kind of clashing together, and it was funny, like them all going back to the office and telling everybody what they had just witnessed. It was funny.
That was one of the better moments of my Joe career, either professionally or personally, because I was walking into the convention center at one point, and there was a small group of people behind me with a lady in front, and they were like 20, 22 feet behind you. So it's that weird, awkward moment of, well, do I hold the door for too long? Or do I just let it close, right? And I'm like, I'm a Boy Scout. I hold the door open. And the lady in the front of the group, as she walked in, said, "Thank you, darling." And no lie, Morgan Lofting, voice of the Baroness.
Amazing.
I'd never met her in person. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I just held the door for the Baroness. And I almost let it close in her face.
So now you'll forever make sure just like to hold the door, right? Because like you never know. You never know who it's going to be.
Yeah, and not only great. Cool moment, but slam the door on the Baroness and see what happens, right? Like,
right,
come on
yeah.
Right, Mark up there doing the Hasbro panel and just
Yep, just like that. Done, dart, done.
She's the captain of the pistol team after all.
Mm-hmm.
So Dan, let's turn back the clock a little bit. Let's get more of the Pixel Dan story.
Sure.
So it's 2008, 7.
Yeah, 7.
Oh God.
I know.
What made you say? Because really, I mean, I look back 3 or 4 years, and I question us moving to YouTube then. So I can only imagine what that decision was like in 2007, 2008. Like, what drove you to say, you know what, I'm going to make videos about toys.
Yeah.
Post them for the world to see.
So that was I mean, YouTube was like brand new then, right? Like it started in like 06, I think. So 07 was still very young, and it was not what it is today, right? Like people weren't going to YouTube to just watch, content. There was no smartphones back then. It was a very different landscape. But I had already started noticing like people were putting up videos specifically about like retro video games and stuff. And that was so interesting to me that I was watching people that were around my age making videos talking about old Nintendo games and stuff that they were playing. And it really hit that like nostalgia thing for me, because I'm like, this is so cool. Like, you know, reliving my childhood through watching these other people do videos. Guys like James Rolfe, who's still doing things as the angry video game nerd today. Like, he was one of the first guys I saw doing stuff like that. And the more I started watching that, the more like I wanted to try it myself. Like, I just felt like inspired to talk about stuff that I was nostalgic for. And I wanted to find my own niche to do it, because like we're like back in 07, like there weren't like toy reviews on YouTube yet. That wasn't really a thing. There weren't, influencer was not a word. It was not a thing that existed back then. And so I wanted to just try my hand at doing something like what I was watching. I wanted to talk about stuff that I loved, I collected, I was nostalgic for, and see if I could find a way to like spread that passion out there. So I got like a camcorder from a Circuit City, another thing that dates this whole thing, right? Circuit City. It was like a little mini DV camcorder. So I got that, and I just basically played around with it. I had to learn how to like capture footage off of a videotape. I had to play around with like built-in video editors just to like learn how to do stuff. And I just started like filming stuff in my toy collection and talking about it. And once I kind of got it figured out, I was like, well, I want to do something that's adjacent to the stuff that I'm watching, the video game stuff. So maybe I can kind of like latch on to what everybody's doing, and people will like watch what I'm doing. So I put my own spin on it, and I started talking about toys that were based on video games. And I created like this series around it called From Pixels to Plastic, which is where my name comes from, Pixel Dan. So if anybody's ever wondered why my name is what it is, because it really doesn't make sense, and like the way things have developed with my channel, like that's the origins of the name. But that worked. Like I started
just from your propensity to walk around with no pants. Hex.
That's sure. That's the pixelate. Yeah, that's. I mean that fits too. Sure, that fits too. But you know, it worked. I was having a lot of fun with these videos, and I started getting featured on the front page of like some video game websites that were like showing my content. Like I was on screwattack.com was a big video game website at the time, and they featured several of my videos on the front page, gametrailers.com, stuff like that. So people were watching my stuff, and it was like this kind of like, oh my God, people are like caring about like me talking about these toys. This is so fun. And it very quickly transitioned, like, well, not necessarily transition, but like, well, now I want to do more, and I want to talk about more things that I love from my childhood. So let's talk about He-Man. And that's like, He-Man was always my number one. That was my big toy collection as a kid. That's what I was most nostalgic for. So I just started doing a couple videos about like old He-Man toys. I did like a video about all the different He-Man variations that had come out at that time, which in 07, there weren't very many of them yet. there was a very small batch of different He-Man figures, and I did stuff like that. And it was right around this time, like in early 2008, Mattel launched the Masters of the Universe Classics toy line, which was like their new modern updated take on He-Man figures, which was like a toy line at this point I had been dreaming of, because like He-Man, you know, like it had basically been gone for a long time. You know, it tried to come back in the early 2000s, and it didn't stick around for very long. So like back then, like we were all like very hungry for new He-Man anything. And this new toy line came out that was like a collector line. It was an online toy line that was sold specifically through their website, which nobody had ever done that before. That was insanity. But I decided like, well, if there's new He-Man toys coming out, I want to talk about these new toys. And that's kind of what like turned into like me reviewing a figure, like, because I would get the new toy and I would make a video just about that one new figure and talk about it. And I did that for the first couple that came out, and pretty quickly I got contacted by Mattel, because I was being featured on the front page of He-Man.org at the time, and that's how I met my good friend today Val Staples was through that whole thing. But once I was starting to get featured on HeMan.org, Mattel reached out and they're like, hey, what you're doing is pretty cool. Would you be interested if we mailed you the figures like ahead of their release and you did these videos? And again, like reiterating, influencers didn't exist yet. This was a thing that like I was like a kid at this point who just got contacted by a toy company to talk about his favorite thing. Like that was mind blowing to me. Like I couldn't believe it. So they started sending me figures, and then that's when it really just like took off. That's when the whole Pixel Dan channel like really became kind of what it turned into, you know? Like I had no idea that it was going to turn into what it eventually did, with like working with all these different toy companies and traveling around to toy conventions and getting to write books. Like it's kind of amazing that all started just from me wanting to share my love of toys with everybody because I saw people sharing their love of video games.
That's really odd, because back in the audio only days, for a long stretch, we were really the only GI Joe podcast of note that was talking about news and current events. And we would pull in. It's hard to believe today, but 40 and 50,000 downloads of the podcast.
That's awesome.
But you talk about Mattel coming forward to embrace you, and it just makes me think of Hasbro's reaction to us, which was to throw up as many walls as
man. Well, it's pretty crazy, and honestly, it's kind of shows how forward thinking that team was at the time. I mean, they launched that MattyCollector.com website, which was like kind of the first time we saw a toy company do like a direct to consumer product line, right? And then they saw these opportunities, like because like, you know, it was me, and then like they were also reaching out to a lot of the fan sites too. Like I know Fwoosh was doing stuff with them at the same time. Like they really kind of embraced the community that they were selling these figures directly to. And like they kind of, I mean, that's just the way it is these days, right? But like when you go back at that time, that was something brand new. I mean, those figures were announced when they first launched at $20 a figure, and people scoffed. They could not believe they were trying to charge $20 for an action figure. And now I'm sitting here going, man, you remember when these things were only $20?
Right. There isn't a whole lot out there that we would like. We feel bad about throwing an Andrew Jackson at and getting wanted, right?
But it was, you know, it was definitely one of those things where like it was still took a while for the YouTube thing to kind of be accepted as widely as it was. Like I think it was pretty clear at the time that things were moving more to that sort of format. But like I remember in those early days, like I said, people weren't going to YouTube yet to watch videos. So if you wanted your stuff to get seen, you had to like share it on forums and message boards, or try to convince some of these websites to like put it on the front page of their website, right? So that people can see them. And I remember like pitching around to different toy news websites, like showing them what I was doing and seeing if they wanted me as a reviewer. And they basically all laughed at me. Like they didn't want videos. They wanted written stuff, you know? And so it was a little hard at first, but I just kind of stuck with it because I was like, I knew that what I was doing was special, and I just stuck to it. And you know, so
right. Well, I mean, it was you, right? Whether it was the right call or just the crazy call, it was the Pixel Dan call.
That's right. It was what I wanted to do. It was what I wanted to do, and that's why I stuck with it.
Readings for squares, man.
Yeah, man. Print is dead, right?
Right.
I used to get so many comments in those early days where people would just be like, "Ugh, I just want to read a review. I don't want to listen to this guy talk." I'd be like, "I'm sorry."
Back to your hole, Grandpa.
Right.
Chew on that. It's the Pixel Dan era.
That's like, I remember the first time I went to Toy Fair in New York. I had no idea what I was doing. I went in totally blind. It was a real learning experience for me You know, I that's the year I found out that like you got to like make appointments for things. You can't just show up and do stuff. So it was a real learning experience for me. But I went and I tried, and I was walking around with a camera, and man, you should have seen the way all those other outlets were like, who does this kid think he is walking around with a camera? You know what I mean? Like a video camera. Like, what does he think he's doing? So it was tough.
Yeah, and you're like, where are the big boys, right? How come the big boys aren't here on the floor?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How do I go to Hasbro? What do you mean it's on site at a different place that you have to have? Yeah. So it was a learning experience. And you know, and I understand, man. You got to pay your dues, and there's all that goes with it, right? So I worked real hard to get where I ended up.
Right. I think sometimes you just have to keep showing up.
That absolutely. You got to put your face out there. I tell people that all the time because, you know, that's one of those things where people will regularly say like, how do I get in contact with these people? Or can you just give me people's emails and stuff? And I always try to tell people like, look, if this is something you're serious about doing, you got to show up. You got to get into Toy Fair. You got to go to San Diego. You got to do the stuff, and you got to put your face in front of these people, hand them a business card, talk to them, show them what you're doing, put yourself in front of them so that they know you, and then they start remembering you. That's what you got to do. You got to do that.
Right. Nope. Nobody wants to watch your video reporting on everything Pixel Dan told you.
Yeah.
I want to hear what Pixel Dan said. Maybe I'll just go watch Pixel Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And
there we go. I like that.
People don't get that. Don't make that connection. They always, hey, can you help us out with these? I sure. It's not going to do you any good though.
I'm always happy to help where I can, but you know, it's that whole like teach a man to fish and type of scenario, right? Like I can't just give you everything. I can show you how to get there, but like then you've got to take it and run with it after that kind of a thing. So
right. No, no, I know what you're saying there because it's funny how a lot of those efforts dry up at that step, right? You know, for speaking as a show where folks come to us all the time and say, hey, I do a show that's a lot like yours because I watched yours or I listened to yours back in the day. I mean, there's any number of them that say that, and then they put out 4, 5, 6 episodes and then they're done.
It's hard, man. You have to stay consistent, and you have to enjoy what you're doing. You just have to, because that shows in your work, and people can tell if you are actually passionate about the stuff that you're talking about. And it's not easy. Like I just said I started in 2007. So I've been doing this for 15, 16 years now on YouTube. I still don't have that figured out. I mean, like it's some videos hit, some videos flop. And you go through periods where it feels like nobody cares about your stuff anymore. And then you'll go through periods where all of a sudden your videos are all hitting and you're getting good views, and it's peaks and valleys, it's highs and lows, and it's hard, man. And you definitely go through these periods where it gets depressing and it makes you sad. And then you just have to like remember the reason you're doing it, and you find that passion and you find the fun, and you keep pressing forward. If it's something you want to do, if it's something you want to share with people, you just got to keep doing it, because that's the only way you're going to get somewhere with it. It's the only way.
Right. Just keep doing. Just whatever it is.
Moving forward. Yep.
Keep doing. So Dan, let's crank it back even further. We've already established that you are, in internet terms, ancient.
Yes.
with a 15-year YouTube channel. But let's go way back, because you're a couple of years younger than Mark and myself.
Yeah.
And somehow you stumbled into HeMan, which was, I mean, HeMan was there when, like, before G.I. Joe. So it doesn't quite line up in terms of your age and HeMan's age. So how did that happen for you as a youngster?
Yeah, I mean, it's always weird when you think about that, because I was born in 82 and HeMan hit stores in 82. So we are the same age, right? Me and HeMan, we're the same age. But if you remember, like that toy line debuted before the cartoon. The cartoon came out in 84, 85. So I was like 3-ish when that was the hottest thing in the world. So I was like right at the right age to be obsessed with the Filmation He-Man and the Masters of the Universe series. So all of my earliest childhood memories, as far as toys go, are absolutely all around Masters of the Universe. Like my mom specifically worked in retail, and so she was my toy hunting mom. Like she knew when trucks were coming in. She would look for specific figures. She would hide them for us so that like I could get every figure in that line. Like that's another thing too. Like that's a line that I share with my mom a lot because she liked it. Also, she can still name all the figures and all the characters when she looks at them. So it's one of those really cool things where like that was something that me and my mom did together when I was young, was everything He-Man. And then it lasted until 87. So like that's a good chunk of my early childhood with He-Man being there and pretty prominent. You know what I mean? And then it still went into syndication and reruns ran for years and years and years. So as a kid, you don't even necessarily realize when things have gone away, when something like that is just playing every day on TV. Like you're still just, it's your favorite show and it's still on all the time, right? So I mean, all my earliest years, my younger years, I mean, that's the toys I played with. It was all about He-Man back then.
I mean, I think it's really cool that you and He-Man were in diapers at the same time, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
and He-Man is still in diapers.
That's right. That's his pants of choice. Furry loincloth. Love it.
Furry diapers.
Furry diapers.
The running joke on What's on Joe Mind is, that's not a loincloth.
That's
yeah.
So again, born in 82. So I feel old. Mark feels slightly older.
Ancient. Yep.
And what it's obviously you are in the sweet spot for marketers of the day. What else was there in the Pixel Dan closet?
Yeah. So I had Thundercats. I had Voltron. Voltron was another one that I really, really liked. I love the Panache Place Voltron line. That was another cartoon that I really liked, which was, early anime. We didn't know that wasn't a thing I thought about. It was just a cool robot cartoon on TV as a kid.
Weird how their mouths never lined up, but you weren't
right.
thinking about it.
Right.
No.
I didn't think about it. You didn't think about it as a kid. Yeah. So that was cool. I had a bunch of superpowers figures. And I think that was just a thing that was like, right. Oh, well, everybody knows Batman. Everybody knows Superman. Everybody knows, so I had a bunch of superpowers figures when I was that young. So it was a good mixture of that sort of stuff. But that's one of those things where like, I look at that era and what I didn't have is I didn't have any Transformers and I didn't have any G.I. Joe figures. So that era right there was like, those were the two big things that are missing. So for the longest time, people have always like asked me like, why don't you talk about these more? Why don't you do that? And like the simple answer was just that I don't really have the nostalgic connection to those properties as heavy as I do a lot of these others, because I didn't have a lot of those toys when I was younger. And then, right as He-Man was winding down, the Ninja Turtles came out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I coasted straight from He-Man to Ninja Turtles madness. And then that took over the next, however many years of my life, basically until I was getting close to like not being into toys anymore, as you're hitting that age, because Turtles was a 10-year long toy line. Oh, yeah. So like that's my two biggest memories as a kid, He-Man, Ninja Turtles. And those have always been my two favorites as a result. But it was in the early 90s, around the Turtles time, that I did kind of get my first G.I. Joe figures, which is kind of why I do have some nostalgic feelings for a certain era of G.I. Joe that most people tend to not enjoy as much.
Not be as quite as high on.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell you, no G.I. Joe and no Transformers in the Weber household is considered child abuse.
That would be a pretty empty house. Yeah, that was my 1 and my 1A. Yeah, definitely.
I know. I've talked to a lot of people over the years that say the same thing. Like those were there too. and then I was HeMan Turtles. So it's like I had the other big two, right? I guess those would be like throw Star Wars in there, and those are like the big 5 toy lines, kind of.
Yeah, it's funny when I look at them, when I look at toy properties in general, it is Turtles and Power Rangers for boy toys, right?
Yeah, Power Rangers.
As the
that's
two
right.
that are almost everlasting, right? If they went away, it never was for very long. And
You're right.
Those two just juggernauts rolling through the decades, no problem at all.
Yeah.
I wonder how much TV had to do with that.
Mm.
Like, because obviously Marvel Sunbow did G.I. Joe and did Transformers, obviously. And I'm sure that those shows got sold together to stations. Because for me growing up in New York, Channel 11 at 4 o'clock on weekday afternoons, G.I. Joe at 4, Transformers at 4:30 for like 3 or 4 years in a row. Well, at the same time on Channel 5, HeMan at 4, Thundercats at 4:30.
There you go.
So if you watched one of those shows, you weren't going from G.I. Joe to watch Thundercats. You weren't jumping.
Right.
You might have jumped from HeMan to watch Transformers because Thundercats was terrible. But anyway.
So I think you're onto something here, Mike, because you really don't find a lot of HeMan and Thundercat fans. You find
Absolutely.
a lot of Joe and Transformer fans. You don't find a lot of Joe and Thundercat fans, right? Or HeMan and Transformer fans. And it had to have a lot to do with the television. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just how those shows were bought and programmed. I really think that it formed more of our play patterns than we'd like to admit it's not even the shows themselves, right? It's just on a very basic dollars and cents level.
Right.
Well, if I buy both of these shows from Marvel Sunbow, they're going to cut me a 10% deal. Okay.
Yeah. And where I grew up, G.I. Joe came on at 3. And so the best I could do was get off the bus and just hustle to kick in my door and dive
as much of it as possible
on the TV and get like the last 8 minutes of it, right? Like,
Mark was only there. He has all those public service announcements memorized.
Man,
but the rest
I was being nice to kids.
Oh, you got where the PSAs, yeah.
No, I was being nice to kids who lived near school just to try to wrangle an after-school invite while the thing was still on, right? I didn't like that kid. But come on, hook a brother up.
What about what's his name again, Mark?
Tim Roberts.
Tim Roberts. Did he live close to school?
Man, he was dangerous even then. Man, I stay away from Tim Roberts. He and I would fight. Before we found out there was a comic shop in the small little Oregon town I grew up in. There was a comic shop that had like pull boxes and back issues. We didn't know that at the time. We just knew that the local Long's Drugs only got in one issue of G.I. Joe when the new one came out. So he and I would hawk that drugstore like crazy and each try to be the one to get the issue before the other guy got it. And so that was a very unhealthy young rivalry based solely on supply chain. What do we know, right?
Right.
He's still after me, I think. So really,
as the producer of the show, Mark, I'm kind of hoping he's still after you.
Well, yeah, I just you guys do this in your big stars. I'm the one actually putting my neck out, right? I'm the one who's sacrificing here. So I hope y'all appreciate that.
I'm kind of hoping that the day that Tim Roberts just kicks that door in behind you,
right? That's the last because that is the front door.
Right.
So it'll be that quick. It'll be bam, drag down, camera falls on its side, and that's it.
I'll just cut him out and be like, well, folks, it finally happened. Tim Roberts has gotten Weber.
That's it. That's it.
I'm hoping that it happens on a Tuesday, between 9 and 11.
So I don't know if ratings will spike that episode or the next episode. But either way, it will be my last contribution.
Right. It'll be. I think that folks will tune in to see the actual event and then they'll tune in for the memorial episode the next.
I want to try to get Lenny Panika, who designs the current classified line for Hasbro, is an old buddy and a fantastic guy, and doesn't live too far away. So as often as Hasbro has stiff-armed our requests for interviews and invitations to roundtables and stuff, I would love to have Lenny just walk into my house in the background at one point. Just walk by, walk out, not smile, not acknowledge the camera or anything. Just be like, in, out. Maybe leave with a soda from the fridge or something. That'd be,
We cannot acknowledge him too.
yeah.
Like it'll just
Yeah. What? This doesn't happen on your channel, guys? Okay.
the live chat stream. Was that Lenny?
Yeah. And Lenny for Halloween a few years ago was Road Warrior Animal, right? So there's some size. There's some size going on there. So yeah, if Lenny walked by with his salt and pepper beard and his gigantic shoulders, I don't think anybody would miss who that was in the background. Maybe I'll see if I've got enough pull to pull that off. It'd be worth it just to do it, right?
Right, sure. Just
Go for it.
I mean,
just say, hey, brother, what are you doing from 9:10 to 9:12?
Yeah, just that little. We just need you for that little.
And what's your favorite
walk in, walk out cameo?
What's your favorite soda? There's a cold one in my fridge. Just walk in, grab it, walk out.
Come on over, grab it, walk on out. That's all I need you to do.
See if I can get that working. I think I'd like to see that happen.
Oh my god! I mean, as funny as that would be, I think in the with the news from today of laying off that number of employees, maybe we back off on that one.
Yeah, maybe I missed my window on that. Yeah,
we don't want to do that to Lenny.
Maybe I missed my window.
Lord knows talking to us seems to be something that they don't want to do at any level. So
feels like high school all over again. That's right.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Oh.
It's one of those things, you know. But, hey, I've said it before. I'll say it again. If that's the choice I have to make between getting canned answers from people from corporate America versus having the honcho around every week, we're going to have the honcho around every week. And that's just without saying.
There you
just
go.
to give my cunning insider knowledge from 7 years ago.
Mostly for the Tim Roberts stuff.
Yeah, and the cat. I got a cat that shows up now and then. Children who run up the stairs. It's a circus, but it's my circus.
Speaking of eyeballs, the week that Mark's cat decided to make his first public appearance.
Yeah.
I took that episode, I snipped it down, I put a little short up with all of the popular cat tags from YouTube, figuring that I would do some dumb, cat short.
Yeah.
And that would get us all kinds of unnecessary views. I did it for the very cynical reason of having this one 55-second bit of video just explode on our channel and have a bunch of disgruntled cat fans.
Yeah.
What the hell's going on? And it turns out that is in fact the single worst performing video on the entire.
Oh yeah. The shorts thing is so weird. Like, I feel like if you're going to do the shorts thing, you have to do a channel that's just those. Like, I don't think those viewers translate. Like, you're not going to pick up a bunch of new viewers for your long videos with those little 20-second shorts. You know what I mean? It's
right.
It's
right.
weird.
Like, I think like with what we do, hour and a half to 2 hours.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's just not it doesn't translate. The people that watch the shorts, like, that's the TikTok audience. So that's the scroll through real fast, watch all these short videos. It doesn't translate.
Right. No, I'll throw one out once in a while when we have a good moment or something, but they're few and far between that I'm going to put
in. I do too. Yeah. I always do it just to try it. Like, I always want to try the new things. I don't, like, let's see what happens. But yeah, they didn't really do anything for me. So I don't know. Like I said, still haven't figured out YouTube. I don't know what I'm doing.
we should go like counterculture and just do all short clips. And then once in a while, mix in like a 19-hour show. Right? If we could
that really confused them.
Yeah.
put the camera on full day. And
Yeah. See how often Lenny comes into my house, like back for lunch. Say hi to the cat.
It's just some slow Sunday afternoon. You're sitting around. You got your towel on from the shower, just sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
What is this guy doing?
Right.
Just being, what's that called? That's like IRL streaming, in real life streaming. That's where you just have your stream running all day, just showing you living life.
Right.
That's a thing.
Right.
That's a thing.
It's Big Brother without the drama.
Yeah, unless Jennifer Garner has a channel, I'm good, right? Like I don't need to see Kevin Bacon.
I'm going to guess that her channel would be sponsored by Capital One, though. So.
Right? What's in my wallet?
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
So Dan, let's go ahead and give the people what they're here for. So I've referred to it in conversations with my staff as Pixel Dan's Jonas-naissance.
Amazing.
I like that.
The Jonas-naissance, yeah.
Which makes it sound like you've had an awakening in regards to the Jonas Brothers, but it's not that. To G.I. Joe and your sudden renewed interest in some of the great characters of the late 80s and 90s.
That's right.
What brought this about, man? When did you decide, you know what? These are the guys.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that like in the early 90s, I did start getting some G.I. Joe figures. That whole thing started because my best friend in the neighborhood when I was a kid, he had a bunch of G.I. Joe figures. So my only experience playing with them when I was younger was going to his house and playing with them. And so I did think that they were cool. I liked the way that they moved. I always thought that was really cool.
Right.
And specifically, I really liked Range Viper. Now, maybe it's because he's got a skull head, and that's like I don't know. That's like a thing with me, is the skull heads.
He's got kind of a He-Man vibe to him.
Yeah, but I always really liked the Range Viper figure. And he had a couple of them. And I remember one year, he gifted me one of his extra Range Vipers. And that was my first G.I. Joe figure, was a Range Viper. And I thought it was really, really cool. I thought it was awesome. But that kind of brought on for my birthday that year. And now we're in the early 90s at this point. I told people this is when you're still going to school and giving out invitations and you're having a birthday party. So people from school are coming to your birthday party. And I remember even specifically, it was like a skating rink birthday party, but I told everybody I wanted G.I. Joes for my birthday. And so I got a bunch that year. And this was year I got heavy duty with the big gun rig missile launchers. I got sci-fi with the silver helmet, that black. He's black and everything, right? That sci-fi. I had the neon orange and green bat, the Cobra bat, that version of bat.
Yeah, he's the stealth bat. No one sees him coming.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That might have clicked something with the neons for me. I don't know. But so those were some of the first ones that I got, and I got those in that era. And that kind of started building a small G.I. Joe collection for me as a kid. And then I remember really liking these dudes. I thought his outfit was the coolest. This design on this figure, I loved it as a kid. I thought it was so cool. And so I kind of fell in love with those ninjas. And then specifically, I remember the commercials for the Shadow Ninjas.
Oh, yeah.
And thinking it was the coolest thing ever. I got to let you know, I like gimmicks. I like translucent toys, and I like that whole turning invisible gimmick. I thought it was cool. So that spoke to me as a kid. And
gimmicks go, getting hit with cold water and changing color is pretty badass.
It's crazy, right? So I got that Snake Eyes as a kid. I started getting some of those other ninjas. I had Slice, I remember specifically, the red one with the fencing mask. So I started getting a lot of the ninja ones, and I thought that they were really cool. And so that's why I do have a bit of the nostalgia for that era of G.I. Joe. And I also relate that to just the other toys that I liked. I mean, come on, I grew up with Masters of the Universe and Ninja Turtles, and these are all a bunch of brightly colored weirdos, right? And that's always been my aesthetic. And so like now when you're introducing this sort of stuff with G.I. Joe, all of a sudden that's speaking to me, you know, and I know it's a little less military. It's a little more, I don't know, ninjas with neon colors, which totally is counterintuitive to being a ninja, but I liked it. I thought it was fun. And that's what kind of spoke to me. And then bringing it back to video games, obviously I was huge into Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat when those games hit. So then all of a sudden when we're getting action figures of Street Fighter characters that just happen to be G.I. Joes, I was all in. I needed the Street Fighter figures, you know, just because I love the video game so much. So I had all of the Street Fighter figures from the G.I. Joe line, at least all the basic ones. I didn't get the vehicles and stuff. Right. And so that was basically my experience with G.I. Joe as a kid. So as a collector, like it's always been one of those things where like I always admired that stuff, but my focus always kind of stayed on completing my He-Man collection, completing, you know, getting all the Ninja Turtle stuff that I wanted, all these things that are sort of related to He-Man, like those always stayed my focus as a toy collector, as an adult. But man, like it's just, every time I saw those crazy pink card backs at conventions, I would always stop and look at those figures. I just always like, I don't know. There was a draw for me, right? And I just always looked at them.
Well,
and
every dealer table had that long box, and you'd almost see them glowing out of the
top. and they always were fairly cheap, you know, like, you know, so I always looked at them and I'm like, should I? No, I probably don't need to. And so I never really did, but on my channel, I really kind of went in pretty hard in the last year on a toy hunting series. And it was just one of those new things I wanted to try with my channel, where I did I made it very episodic, and I wanted there to be like an underlying kind of like journey that I was going on through my videos. And when I started it, like people responded to it pretty quickly. And I was like, okay, like I'm having fun making this. People seem to want to watch this. I'm going to stick with this for a while. Let's see where this goes. And so I decided like, okay, I need a thing. There needs to be a story arc for my year of toy hunts. Maybe it's Ninja Force time. Maybe it's time to go in and start buying G.I. Joe. And so I kind of started it early on and did it in a couple episodes. And like the audience loved it. Like they got so happy about me buying G.I. Joe figures that like they really started egging it on, you know? And so it became fun for me because now I'm like at these toy shows and I'm starting to pay attention to stuff that I didn't really focus on too much before. And all of a sudden things felt exciting again. They felt like fresh and new and fun, and I didn't know what I was going to run into. And it blew up into more like, I wasn't just buying Ninja Force figures. I started buying all kinds of G.I. Joe figures that I thought looked cool. You know, like I pretty quickly got Big Boa. I pretty quickly got Crocmaster. I got Serpentor with his air chariots. I got Globulus. I got all the weirdos because I thought I think they're so cool. And so it just became this fun, exciting thing for me because like I said, it feels new and different and something I haven't really explored in all these years as an adult toy collector. And it seems like people were really enjoying it, you know, like now I'm at a point where like I'm going to conventions and people are showing up at my table and they're like, you ever seen this figure before? I want to put it in your collection, you know, like stuff like that's happening all of a sudden where people are like pushing me to buy the Eco Warriors and, you know, doing that kind of thing. Like that's become a thing. And it's just been a real fun interaction with the audience that has just made the toy collecting fun and exciting. And that's what it's all about, right? Like it's just all about having fun and enjoying it.
You threw them a curveball, so now they're excited again.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it's like they've been waiting. They've been waiting for me to do something like this.
Come on, dude.
Right. I can't tell you how much I like the irony that the G.I. Joe subset that really spoke to a Masters of the Universe kid was the first one with less articulation.
Isn't that wild? I don't even. I mean,
dial this down a little bit. And
I guess it didn't bother me, right? Because I was used to it. So I guess it didn't bother me.
Right.
Yeah, I know. It's weird. And it's funny though, like there's always like that little bit of like nervousness, like when you feel like an outsider stepping into a new world, right?
Mhm.
And plus, like, because I'm like a YouTube personality, I honestly was a little like, the community might actually not want me here.
Right.
Like I didn't know what the reaction was going to be. You know what I mean? So there was definitely a little bit of like, we'll just see how it goes kind of a thing. But it's been really amazing how supportive like everybody's been of the whole journey. And like I do get the odd comment here and there where somebody is really mad at me that that's the version of G.I. Joe that I like.
Right.
And it's
Right.
like, you know, like I think I had one comment from a guy that was like, you're literally celebrating the thing that killed my childhood, blah. And I was just like, that seems a little extreme, but like, I'm sorry, you know? But for the most part, like, it's been really amazing how so many people in the Joe community have been like reaching out to me and, you know, coming up to me at shows and talking to me, to the extent that like, I was a show guest at Toylanta this year, which is typically a pretty Joe heavy convention.
Mhm.
And I was a show guest at the DFW GI Joe action figure show down in Texas. And next year, I'm going to be at Joe Fest. They've reached out to me and they want me to come out to Joe Fest next year. And
Right.
I just think it's awesome that like I'm getting these opportunities to like expand a little bit and step into these different worlds and experience this toy line in my own way, but I'm experiencing this toy line and the community, and it's been a lot of fun.
I like, just one thing you touched on that I really like. It might be my favorite thing about collecting is that nobody defines what you need in your collection or when your
Yes.
collection is complete or what's missing beyond yourself, right?
That's
Maybe you
right.
only
That's right.
collect Cobra, or I collect pretty much anything 3 3/4 Joe, but not Cobra Law. I didn't like it as a kid. I saw it on
Yeah.
the shelf and had money and didn't buy it, right?
You were
So
like, what is this?
yeah, I don't
That guy's
have
a
it.
snake?
Yeah, I don't. How do you pose that guy? Come on now. I don't need it. I don't want it, and therefore it's not missing from my collection, right? Whereas some people would like Adam Riches, who does a lot of the card art for Joe these
Yeah.
days, has 800 Royal Guards or something like that. Like
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
he only wants that one guy, which
Yeah.
is kind of ironic because he came in a 3-pack. So you think about every one of his tag team partners somewhere out there in the wild that
Oh,
doesn't have a
man.
Royal Guard anymore because of Adam Riches. Or
Oh.
let me do it right. This guy over here who's got 100 some odd beachheads and
Amazing.
in an army on his shelf. So
129.
very nice, right? Like that's what I love about collecting, right?
You're
Only
totally
you know
right.
what you need, right? And
That's right.
nobody should be able to tell you different.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been a big believer, and it's always been the philosophy I've tried to share with everybody, that there's no wrong way to collect. As long as you're not hurting anybody, there's no
Right.
wrong way
Well-
to collect. And every toy that exists, every toy is somebody's favorite toy. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter what it is, right? Like every toy can be somebody's favorite. So like just like the things that you like. Don't let anybody tell you that you're wrong for collecting things that make you happy and make you excited.
There was a guy on a Transformers page back when I was working on the Transformers brand who was a Beast Wars fan, right? He was just
Yeah.
Beast Wars for life. And a lot of G1 Transformer fans like myself didn't care so much for Beast Wars, right? Transformers is back, but it's totally different from what we
Yeah.
love.
Truck,
So
not
there's
monkey, right?
Truck Not Monkey, right? So, but usually it's just, an internet fight and it doesn't go anywhere. But this
Right.
guy, he just said, look, I get you G1ers are only ever going to like Optimus and Cliff Jumper and Starscream and da-da-da-da-da. And he said, but I was born in 1990, right? I was 8 or I was 6 when Beast Wars came on.
Right.
And there wasn't any Transformers before that. So Beast Wars is my G1. It was my introduction to the universe, and that's why it'll always be my favorite, no matter what you old guys say.
Right.
And I'm like,
right.
you know what? I never heard it better than that one guy on a message board who just went, dig it. I fell in love with Transformers the exact same way you guys did, just in a different era. And
Different era.
I'm like,
Man,
you know
and
what?
That is so
Respect.
right. And I mean, like you talked about earlier, you mentioned how Ninja Turtles has like never gone away, right? Ninja Turtles has reinvented itself essentially since it debuted. It's been something new. So like every generation has their version of the Ninja Turtles.
Mhm.
And I'm really experiencing that now as a father who has 2 young kids. My youngest is obsessed with the new Mutant Mayhem movie, the current movie. That is his Ninja Turtles. And
Right.
it's to the point where like when he looks at my Ninja Turtles, he questions why they don't look the way his
Right.
Ninja Turtles look. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't know. I think that's one of those things too. Like being a parent really kind of made me much more aware to that sort of thing too. Like when you have young kids experiencing their things their way, like I always like wanted to try really hard not to force my stuff on my kids, right? Like, of course,
Mhm.
I was going to show them He-Man. Of course, I was going to show them, but I didn't want them to like, I didn't want to force them to like it because dad likes it. I wanted them to have their own things that they liked. And, you know, like my oldest son, he never cared about He-Man, but he found Ben 10, and that's like his thing. And when I watch how excited he is with Ben 10, I see myself as a kid excited about He-Man. Like, it's really cool just to watch these different generations. Like you said, they have their own versions of this stuff. And that's what's going to matter to them. That's what's going to be their introduction to these
Mhm.
brands that have lived on all these years. And all of it is right. All of it is right. There's no wrong in any of that.
And there's almost no better joy as a collector than sharing what you loved with your kids.
Absolutely.
And then seeing where it goes. And neither
Yes.
of my kids were that big into G.I. Joe, but my daughter's crazy for Marvel Comics.
Oh,
Fantastic.
that's great.
And
Yeah.
my son became a much bigger Transformers fan than I ever was.
Oh, see,
So
that's great. That's great.
cool. Yeah, I like introducing them to things I loved or love, and then see if it resonates, right?
Right. Yeah. That's what you got to do. It's what you got to do.
Derek's a huge fan of G1 Megatron.
My son took to a Christian summer camp, decided to take one of Dad's Transformers
Uh-oh.
with him, and I found this out when he came back and hadn't cleaned out his backpack for a couple days. So I was cleaning out his backpack, and there in the bottom of the backpack was a G1 Megatron.
Oh,
Broke it into 8 billion pieces by all the school books and stuff that were on top of it.
oh no.
And my initial reaction was like, what the hell? And then I was like, you know what? If that pretty realistic looking Luger pistol got broken on the way to church camp, that's probably the best possible outcome here, right? Rather than Derek waving around.
Yeah. Oh no.
A really good looking pistol.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh, yeah. I say actually, you know what? Matter of fact, he's within reach because he's just such good comedy. He's just in a bag, but
Oh, look at that.
that's what's left of my Megatron. But
Oh, but at
yeah.
least you do have like this story that goes with it, right? Like
I mean,
sometimes
it paid for itself, right?
yeah.
And that original Megatron was such a bad toy from a robot perspective.
Right.
I didn't even bother trying to replace him. I'm like, yeah, he's expensive. He wasn't much fun even back then. So we're good. Yeah.
Right. His tiny arms and his huge head and his
not just his head
and his unfortunately placed trigger.
Yeah.
I mean, not a ton of playability in old Megatron there.
Just as a pistol, just as a really realistic pistol that we didn't know back then would become a rare thing in about 5 years, right? So.
Right. Within
that's
amount of time.
So many things that you just never it's like you look back sometimes and you're just like, I had no idea that this was going to be the thing. But like, yeah.
At some point, I'll probably glue him back together as a pistol, because
There
that'll
you go.
probably work, right? But he'll
Yeah.
never be a robot again. But he never really was a robot before, so no great loss.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
when we were kids, there were just a lot of days where like, because Rob and I did not double up on Transformers. We kind of had the big combined assemblage. Like, no, we never both got the same guy.
Mhm.
And amazing how Megatron was just never in the conversation.
Right.
It's like, hey, you know what? Maybe you should get him, Rob. Oh, no, maybe you, Mike.
Right. Yeah, you Heckle and Jekyll the Megatron.
I think we're just gonna have a couple days where Soundwave's running the show. I think he's
Yeah.
the guy.
Did you guys have a really angry Starscream in the collection? That Megatron wasn't even there, but he wasn't in charge. I
No.
could totally see that. Yeah.
Strange as it sounds, between the two of us, no seekers.
None, huh?
None. I was not a huge Transformer toy guy. As much as I loved watching the show, but then you'd get the toys in your hands, and it would be like, well, this is a very cool looking shiny brick that I can move his arms, and that's all. And then they were almost universally all better as vehicles than they were as robots, and I needed it to be the other way around.
Right. Did you guys have Jetfire? Because he's the mold breaker, right?
Yes, yeah. Jetfire was flat out awesome.
Yeah.
There's a few of them in that run that are really good. That like Optimus was real good. Shockwave was great. Jetfire was great. Soundwave was pretty good. So that but for the most, you get any smaller than those guys, and the technology wasn't there to make them.
The sadness of Soundwave was that he aged terribly because his knees bent the wrong way. So after about a year of good play, because he's a great character,
leans forward, yeah.
No, he falls back like a baby falling down, right? Just flat on his butt. Like, all right. Kind of cooler on the cartoon, Soundwave, than you are falling like a baby on my shelf.
The other thing which we constantly veer off into tangents, which I know you'll have some thoughts on.
Okay.
Especially with Mark and myself and even Joe Colton when she's around. We are wrestling honks at What's on Joe Mind.
Nice.
And I know this is a subject that is near and dear to your heart, because on weekends you are often moonlighting as
the Spotlight Spencer Powers. Yep. That's right.
Until recently, you held the championship belt in, I don't want to screw up the name of your federation.
I held the title at Pinfall Wrestling Association. That was a little over a year ago. I had that title. And actually I haven't worked since May. I'm kind of trying to figure out if I'm winding down a little bit. I don't know, but I've been working on the independent wrestling scene since I was 20 years old. Basically shortly after high school, I went to school to be a pro wrestler. And then I spent most of my 20s specifically. Every weekend I was traveling around Illinois, Indiana, those areas, working wrestling shows. And it's just been always one of those things I love and I'm passionate about. It's one of my other passions. I love pro wrestling. And, as I got a little older, I just kind of moved it down to I would still work once a month here at the local company. And I still even right now, it's been several months since I've worked, but I've got the itch. I want to do it more. It's hard to not do it.
Right. I mean, you say that you're starting to wind it down, and I do have to remind you that younger than us can still be old.
Yeah, that I was gonna say. So here's the weird scenario that you're in, right? As a pro wrestler in that industry, I'm 42 right now, almost 42. I'll be 42 in March, and all of a sudden you're looking around and you're in the locker room with 20-year-olds, right? Mm-hmm. All the other guys wrestling are 20, 21, 22, 23. And when you start having scenarios where other guys in the locker room come up to you and they say, "Man, I used to watch you when I was a kid, And I just want to say that, like, it's really cool being in a locker room with you now. It's like, no, stop. Don't say things like that to me. What is going on right now? Because that happened. That started happening. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, man. Kids that were coming to these local shows are now trained wrestlers. Like, they watched us and then they grew up and got into it. And it's like, oh, this is so crazy. Like, thinking about stuff like that. And yeah, like, also, like, the older you get, the more it hurts. like you wake up a lot more sore the next day than I did when I was 22 years old and doing it. So plus, you know, obviously I've got a lot going on these days too, and I got a wife and 2 young kids, and I'm trying to do a YouTube thing, and I'm writing books, and I still have a day job, and it's a lot. I wear a lot of hats, but it is something that I love. I love it.
I got to imagine the worst thing to hear in the locker room from a 22-year-old is, hey, I got an idea for the match tonight. How about a pile driver from the apron through a table? What do you think? It'll be great.
That's the thing, man. Oh, man. I don't want to get into that whole, like, argument, but, man, some of these younger guys got to slow down.
Right?
Slow it down. Quit with the high spots. Let's tell a story. Let's tell a story.
You know, that's got to be the other side of it, is that you're at your age, your brain has probably never been so good at telling a story in the ring.
Right.
And it's just, you know, your body just, you can't keep up with all the stuff that you want to do. And then again, I'm not slighting you. It's just
no
life kind of stuff. You can't keep up with 32-year-old Pixel Dan.
You start to work safer, right? I mean, look at any, even pro on TV who is in their 40s. You can tell that they have figured out how to work safer and smarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
You stop taking ridiculous bumps when you don't have to. You stop doing 50 high spots in a match just to show people that you can do it, just to do a train wreck spot. You know, like, yeah, you work safer and you work smarter, because that's how you're going to get to keep wrestling. Like, some of these kids don't realize that, like, they're gonna wreck their bodies and be ready to retire at 30 years old. Like, you know what I mean? It's crazy. It's crazy.
I have mad respect for anybody who actually did it, right? Because I'm just a fan, right? Never even thought about getting into it, just have enjoyed it pretty much my whole life. And the question I love, and we asked this from the wrist lock, Wes Whitlock, was, what's the worst bump you ever took? I love that.
Oh, what's the worst bump that I ever took?
Because usually there's no thought. Usually we just get exactly what it was.
Right. I know. And it's like, because I've definitely taken some gross bumps before. Like, and it's always
went wrong. It can be one that went right and still hurt.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, and the weird thing about wrestling too is the stuff that always hurts the most is always the stuff that, like, doesn't even look crazy, or like you know, like was an accident, or you know what I mean. Like, it's always like, I always got hurt doing the simple stuff. I never got hurt doing the big stuff. It was so weird. So I guess one of the a bump that I hated taking that sucked was, I was working a ladder match, and we did this spot. Like, I don't know how familiar you guys are with like you know Christian Cage, right? Christian,
right.
You know his kill switch finisher where, like, he spins the guy and drops.
Right.
So I hit a guy with that move off the top of a ladder, and the way we did it, right? The way we did the spot is we were both climbing up the ladder, and we did got to the top of the ladder, traded blows. I hit him with a big elbow. He spun around, and I hooked him right off the top of the ladder. And then we both jumped off the ladder sideways and spun in the air, and I hit that move. And just that, from that height, coming down together, that splat together, I remember hitting that and just, like, I didn't want to get up. I was like, and we just both kind of laid there. It sucked for both of us. The crowd popped huge. Popped huge. So we were like I remember laying there, and I just remember him going, hey, at least listen to them. Like, at least listen, like they're happy. And I'm like, yeah, okay, can we rest for a bit? Like, I don't want to get up.
Was it just you two in that match?
It was just the two of us in that particular match. It was like a one-on-one ladder match. I remember one of the things that really sucked, and this is one of those like moments where I got injured, and it was like a total accident thing, but like I did a springboard over the top rope dive onto a bunch of guys who didn't catch me. And when the guys aren't there to catch you the right way, like that's when that gets risky. And it was a weird thing where like I knew that I wasn't being caught, but I still didn't like I didn't take the bump clean, and I put my foot down. So like the ball of my foot smacks the concrete floor because there's no pads.
No.
Indie wrestling, there's not always pads. Right. And it smacks the concrete floor. And I knew immediately, like I felt this pain in my foot that like, I was like, oh no, like that can't be good. I hobbled back up. I was able to finish the match, but I could not walk on my foot. I got backstage and I took my boot off and my foot went, it just got massive. It swelled up so huge. So I ended up like, it wasn't like a break, but it was like a severe bruise and possibly a crack on like right in the ball of my foot. And like I actually had to go to the doctor for that and get like scans, and they put me on crutches for 6 weeks. It was brutal. And that's one of the most painful things I experienced, I think.
I remember Taz saying on commentary once that when the guy took a superplex and his feet hit really hard.
Oh yeah.
He called out and he said, your heels take so much damage and nobody talks about it. Right. I thought that was really good insight from a guy who obviously did it at a very high level.
Sure. So if you ever watch, like when you take a suplex, you're supposed to land with your feet flat. When you're taking the move, you come around and your feet hit flat-footed on the ground. Because if you keep your feet pointed up and your heels are hitting the mats, yeah, that's going to hurt and you can really mess up your foot. And then especially when you're coming from that height, like superplexes do always suck. Those always hurt. Anytime you're falling off the top rope, it never doesn't hurt. I'm telling you, that move sucks. And yeah, if you're coming down and your heels are banging, that's brutal. That hurts thinking about it.
There was one I remember a few months ago with Finn Balor, who's one of my favorites, and usually smooth and safe.
Yeah.
But he superplexed Cody Rhodes, and it was that bump
when you have the double bottom out the ring.
It didn't look that bad, but immediately I forget if it was Booker T or whoever was on commentary was like, "Oh, that's not what you want right there."
Yeah, when you have that double bump sound, that second guy usually gets the wind knocked out of him because the first guy's getting the actual and he's bottoming out the ring. So then you're hitting it and so that's that's no good.
When we talked to ask Wes off the air of the wrist lock, the worst he ever took, he said, "I'll tell you the worst one I didn't take was working on the Indies in Maryland. I think it was facing a tag team. I forget their name. And they said, well, and then we'll hit you with our finish." And he's like, "Okay, well, what's the finish?" We call it the iced tea. And basically it was a 2-man razor's edge. So they're both holding you up.
So they hold one arm each or something?
Yeah. So you're basically crucified 8 feet in the air, and then they just bring you down. And he was like, "Yeah, cool. We're not doing that."
That's the kind of stuff that scares me too, because like already the razor's edge is like, all right, can you actually hit that move right? Like I don't know if I because that's like there's a
lot of strength there. Like people forget because he used to hang out with Kevin Nash. Scott Hall was a humongous individual.
He was huge.
Yeah, he's 6'7", 6'8" in his own right. So when that dude, like he was clearly very strong and could lift most guys up like that to where their bodies would clear him when they went over. And most guys trying to do that move are not nearly that big.
Dude, yeah, you don't want to get dropped like right on the back of your neck, or you know what I mean? Like they gotta be able to like throw you out.
Right.
So you land clean.
Right. Unless you're just super ginormous. Just don't do the razor.
Yeah.
Oh, bad plan. So we know you are pseudo famous for getting roughed up by Becky Lynch that one night.
Oh yeah, that was fun. Yeah. No, I did some extra work for WWE on a couple occasions. But that particular night, I actually got to like be on TV as security, because if anybody doesn't know, I remember so many people were like, how did this even happen? But like, that's when WWE comes to town, they hire local workers
Right.
to be extras in case they have a scenario where they need guys that know how to take bumps and do stuff or know the business. You know what I mean?
Those guys in the WWE black polo shirts are usually local
exactly
talents.
Anytime you see security or a ref that is there, that's not like a typical ref, but he's there just to get beat up they're local guys. They're local wrestlers. And so like I got the opportunity, I worked a SmackDown and we had a segment where I was one of those black polo shirt security guys. And we were in charge of a segment with Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair. And this was on like Becky's WrestleMania rise. So this was awesome because this was in March.
That white hot run to
yes. Yeah, so we're in March. So this was right before WrestleMania, and like her segment was like a promo with her and Charlotte that turned physical. And so then like refs came out first and tried to separate them, and then they kept fighting, and then here comes us black polo shirt guys to try to separate them. And Becky Lynch grabbed me and slammed me into the barricade, and it was awesome. I'm not even gonna lie, it was awesome. That was a cool moment too, because like peeking behind the curtain a little bit, right? We all know, and it's been long enough now, I think it's okay. All right, but like when we went through the segment, basically all we were supposed to do is like, okay, you guys run out there, pull them apart, have them break away and fight each other a little bit more, then pull them apart again, we get them backstage, end of segment. Like that's basically what we were supposed to do. We're in gorilla position, like right before the segment starts, and Becky's getting ready to go out, and she turns around and she comes up to me and she goes, "Can I throw you into the barricade when you come out there?" And I said, "I'll be wherever you need me to, Becky. Absolutely. Whatever you need from me, I'm there for you." And she's like, "Okay, great."
Yeah. When the man asks to throw
when the man asks you, dude. So
a barricade.
I just remember like I went running out there and I went straight. I beeline straight for her because I was like, I want her to throw me in this barricade since she asked me about it. So I beeline straight for her, and we start pulling her apart, and she just grabs right onto me, slams me in that barricade. I took the full back bump into it. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. So I took the full back bump, and it's WWE, so everything's nice and padded and feels good, but it makes that awesome thud. Boom! Crowd reacts. I'm laying on the ground. I'm like, I gotta try not to smile because I feel real good about this, right?
I tell you, man, the look on your face. I've seen some of the stills from that.
Yeah,
like you're selling it. You are going, oh shit, this is gonna happen now.
Yeah. Dude, it was so fun. I got backstage and my phone had exploded. I had so many texts and tweets and Facebooks, like people like, was that Pixel Dan? Was that Pixel Dan? It was awesome. It was cool.
Did you get to talk to Becky afterwards?
I did, yeah. Well, like she came as soon as the segment was over, she came backstage and walked straight up to me, and like we shook hands and she thanked me and we chatted for a little bit, and then she just went on about her day. But she was super cool. It was a great experience. The whole thing was awesome. And like I said, I got to do it a couple times. So I've actually done extra work a few times now. And actually, I can even talk about this because by the time this airs, it will have already aired. WWE just actually hired me to come out and be a talking head on one of their TV shows, one of their Peacock shows. Yeah. It's about toys. It's about wrestling toys. So that actually airs at the end of December on Peacock. So it will have already aired by the time people see this, but excellent. It's very cool. Like kind of getting to do some stuff like that with WWE. It's been awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Their TV production team is top notch. So I'm sure.
Oh, there was amazing. Oh, it was such a cool experience going into the studio, and just an awesome crew. And they were so fun. Like we seriously just like we're doing right now. We sat there all day, just talking about wrestling and talking about action figures, and all those guys are just into the same stuff. It's amazing.
I always like talking to guys who actually are in the business. Have your kid, I don't know how old your kids are, but have they seen you wrestle live?
Yes, they have. And my youngest specifically he's like full on obsessed with pro wrestling right now. My oldest never really got super into it. He liked coming to watch me wrestle, but otherwise, like outside of that, like he never wanted to watch wrestling on TV with me or anything. My youngest is full on obsessed with Cody Rhodes right now. He just runs around the house pretending to be Cody Rhodes all the time, and we have to play the entrance music for him all the time. So that's actually really fun. It's really cool sharing that with him.
Did he ask for a regrettable neck tattoo for Christmas?
No, not yet, at least.
How much did you smarten your kids up before they saw you actually compete live?
So I was always really worried about that. Actually, I didn't want them to think Daddy was getting hurt. So I was always really good about like introducing them to the guys that I was going to be working before the show, so that they like, this is Daddy's friend. We're going to like, what we're doing is just, part of the show. We just, Daddy's okay. And I'm really lucky because they never were worried about me. And they actually like really like watching and cheering me on and everything, which is pretty cool, seeing your kids out there like rooting for you and everything. So that's something that I really like. And it's actually one of the things right now that I'm like kind of missing about like not doing it actively, because they specifically keep asking when I'm going to do it again. And I kind of like want them to see me do it while I can some more, so that's one of the pulls right now to like trying to pull me back to it.
That's really cool. It totally makes sense too, right? Like when it's up to you on some level, when do you actually turn in your jersey if it's your call, right?
It's hard. It's always been hard. And one of those things in wrestling, especially on the indies, is you always see so many guys who like retire, but then they always come back. So I always said, I'm never going to say that word. I'm never going to say that word. I don't want to be the guy who's like goes out there and has a last match and cries in front of everybody, but then turns around and comes back in 6 months because I can't stay away from it. Like so like, I kind of made the decision earlier this year. I was like, well, I've got a really busy year this year with travel and everything. Maybe I should just kind of like round out what I'm currently doing and step away, and we'll see how I feel. And that's kind of where I left it. So that's where I'm at right now.
Now, when you get the urge, when the kids start asking you, is it because they're happy with you, or is it because they're mad at you?
Because they want to see their dad get beat up. I mean, maybe. I don't know. Could be a little bit.
You may want to take that into account. We need some context on these familial pulls there, Dan.
I think if the kids are pushing Dad towards AEW, they probably want you to get hurt. That's what I think.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't think I could keep up with AEW. I feel like I would not fit in.
Yeah, I think old school is not necessarily embraced down in Jacksonville, but
so we've got a hint of what Mark thinks of the current product that we see damn near every night on our television. Dan, what do you watch and what do you think of what's going on?
So it's hard to keep up with it all. There's so much wrestling on TV these days. And I used to be such an adamant, like every Monday for sure, every Raw, I would always watch Raw every time. And I can't keep up with it as much these days. So I feel like I take in so much of it through recaps and YouTube videos and news shows and stuff like that. But I always try to tune in for the premium live events as much as I can, the pay-per-views. Like I just watched Survivor Series and had a really good time watching Survivor Series. And the CM Punk thing at the end was mind-blowing to see actually happen. I think right now so I will say this, and I know that we've kind of talked about like the style difference between AEW and WWE and everything, but as a worker, I think the positive is that there are so many options for guys to get work right now. Mm-hmm. There's places for everybody to work, and much like in toy collecting, I think that there's room for all these different types of wrestling, even if it's not for me. Obviously, there's appeal to other people. There's room for old school storytelling. There's room for comedy wrestling. There's room for high spots. So like, even if it's not something I care about, I'm glad that it exists. I'm glad that there's other promotions out there and places for a lot of these guys to get jobs. I think that's awesome. WWE is still probably what I pay attention to the most. That being said, that's still kind of my preferred style. And I think right now they've got like a lot of big players. Like we've definitely gone through some periods where like you look at it and you're like, who are the top stars? There's not as many top stars, but like just looking at Survivor Series alone, like obviously you got Roman Reigns, you got Cody Rhodes, who's still on fire, which like I was worried that they made a mistake not putting that strap on him at Mania last year, but like he's still like the hottest thing going. So maybe that'll all pan out good, right? But, Seth Rollins is awesome. And now CM Punk is back. And, like, I don't know, like, there's a lot of, like, high-profile. Randy Orton just came back, and he's amazing. Randy's awesome. There's a lot of high-profile guys right now. And I think that, like, this could be a really exciting era as long as it all, like, gets booked properly, I guess. You know what I mean?
I think that's the biggest change in the last year and a half. And there's a very, very definite line as far as when that sort of thing happened. But the top of the WWE card is much deeper now than it was in 2021, right?
You're right. You're right. A year or two ago. Yeah, it didn't look like this. And that was like, that stood out to me like at Survivor Series. Because just seeing that War Games match at the end, all of those guys, plus then CM Punk came back, you're like, whoa, look at all of this. Right. Like there's a lot of legit superstars there right now, which was definitely something that felt like it had been lacking.
And I get excited when I see the next guys, right? Gunther and Braun Breaker and Austin Theory, if they'd ever start using him correctly again, right? Like I like seeing those next A-listers as they develop. That's exciting because for a long time it felt like they didn't have any of those guys who might be the next guy, and now they got 3 or 4. So.
Or when they found those guys, they would give them their month-long push and then forget about them.
Yeah,
that's what it always felt like. They were always so hung up on the old names, cycling in the old names, the old superstars, and it always felt a little off because, like, of course you'd get excited when you see Stone Cold pop up and do something. But then when he's standing in the ring next to the guy that's supposed to be like coming up and he is like, the balance is so off. It's like, it's a glaring problem that they're not building these guys up the proper way, right? Like they're relying too heavily on nostalgia, like everything else these days, right? We're relying too heavily on nostalgia rather than creating new superstars. So hopefully we're on that path now. Hopefully we're on that path.
I think 2 years ago, that run that Keith Lee was on, where he was the second to last guy out at Survivor Series, and then shows up in the Rumble and actually gives Brock Lesnar all he can handle ultimately at the end, he gets dumped out.
Right.
So like, it's like, that was your guy and you missed it. And it was just like, he was just the last guy in a long string of about 5 years that they refused to let ascend to that next level.
I know.
And that's just not how it's done right now.
I remember getting really, really excited for guys like Shinsuke Nakamura. I thought for sure he was like, oh man, this dude's a rock star. He's so fun to watch. And it just, it hurt watching them not put him where it felt like he needed to be. And I'll say the same thing for Finn Balor originally, right? Like when Finn first got called up from NXT, and like they put that, he won the undisputed belt, right? And got hurt. And then it's like they just said, well, he's done. They gave up, right? And it sucks because Finn is so good. So good. And especially at that moment, man, the demon stuff was exciting when he would pull that out. And it felt like he was going to be the guy. And then it just kind of got pulled out from underneath him. So it was frustrating watching a lot of that stuff.
Again.
Huh?
Over and over.
They jobbed
over and over. Yeah.
They jobbed the demon out to a ring rope, remember?
Oh, yeah.
I think you and I are not too far off, Dan, because I what frustrates me about AEW is I wanted it to be better. I want it to be a better alternative. And the one thing that turns me off, comedy match, totally fine. I'm fine with all different styles of wrestling, but when it's open, so open, where the guys are working together so obviously, right?
Where it feels choreographed, it feels like they're going through the motions, they're going through their spots. That's always
they don't even care how much it looks like they're helping each other. And the idea that you'll have a match where I'll hit you with my finish, go for the pin, you kick out, we go 10 more minutes, and then I pin you later on, right? And it was like, couldn't we just have had, if I was going to go over clean, couldn't we have just gone with I hit you with my finish, go for the pin right away, and that's the end? Why is that extension better other than to make my finisher look weak? Like, kicking out of
finishers is one of the things that's always kind of driven me nuts about modern era of wrestling, because it's that thing that like it devalues it, right? It stops being your finisher if you're not finishing your match with it.
I've always believed if I hit you with my finish and go for the pin right away, I get you every time, unless it's the king blow off match,
right? Unless the story dictates that we do a couple of falsies and some kickouts on the finishes to get the crowd excited. Yeah, exactly. That's my philosophy too. But
you used to see that pop, right? If Austin hit Angle with the stunner and went for the pin and Angle kicked out, the crowd lost their mind. And now it's like, now they're expecting the kick out.
Now they expect it. I know. That's the problem.
That's not their fault, right? We've trained them to expect the kick out, which doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I agree.
The advice from I'll bring him up again, the great Scott Hall. He never dragged out the Razor's Edge unless it was a match he was scripted to win.
Yeah.
So you never saw anybody kick out of the Razor's Edge. It was he used to laugh about it and call it the most protected move in the business.
Yeah.
I would rather not hit my finish, right? Than hit it and have someone kick out of it. If I'm going for the pin right away, right? If we're exhausted and I get it and it's 8 seconds before I get to you, fine. Totally fine, right? But bam, hook the leg, that's a 3. It's gotta be.
Right.
Yeah.
We also don't make nearly as much of the rope break as we used to either. And I like that's the easy way out of all those finishing moves, right?
Yeah. The rope break,
rope or
the leg up. Yep.
Goes under the rope or it's just something, and they refuse to use that so often. So Dan, we're going to give you a couple minutes here. I want you to do some humble brag.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We're going to stay on the wrestling track a little bit. What's the most famous guys you've been in the ring with?
I guess probably the most current famous guy I've been in the ring with. Last year I worked a match with Matt Cardona. Super cool guy, Major Wrestling Figure podcast. Obviously got to give those guys a major shout out too, because they put me in their Major Bendy's toy line. So that's another weird thing. Like my first ever action figure that I've ever got is of me as a wrestler, which was like coming full circle for me, right? It was like really crazy that happened. So
that is badass, by the way.
It's amazing. It was just a really cool moment. So had a ton of fun working with Matt. He's super professional. So smart and so over right now. Like, got to be one of the smartest guys in the business. Seriously. I guess probably most famous historically wise is I actually worked a whole 3-match feud with Cowboy Bob Orton.
Oh, wow.
Hall of Famer, WWE Hall of Famer, Cowboy Bob. He's from kind of the area. He lives in St. Louis. Yeah. So he actually worked around here pretty regularly. I've worked with Cowboy Bob multiple times. He's also a great guy. It was really great kind of working with him. And that was one of those things where I remember being the first time I got in the ring with him, I was nervous. And usually there's always butterflies in wrestling, but usually once I go through the curtain and step in the ring, that goes away and I'm fine. Because I'm comfortable in the ring and I'm good with what I'm doing. But this felt like I was stepping in the ring with a guy from another era. Major superstar. The world knows this guy. He was at the first WrestleMania. I mean, I didn't know what to expect with him. And he did work different than a lot of guys that I worked with. You know what I mean? Like and he was very much a, let's call it in the ring, pal. You know, like we knew our finish, but otherwise we were just going to go out there and work. And I prefer that a lot of times. I prefer to like know my spots, but like I don't want to plan everything if I can like go out there, because I one of the things that I was really trained was important is to listen to the crowd, right? And like if you're just going through your script, it may not necessarily match up with what the crowd's reacting to, and you need to like feed off of that and give them what they want, right? So that's always been my thing. But like, you know, with Bob, it was like, cool, I really have no idea what's going to happen when I get in the ring with this guy. Like, but he ended up being one of the easiest guys to work with. And, you know, he was light. It was easy. Super fun. I took his superplex off the top rope a couple times, which was awesome. Saying that I've taken the Cowboy Bob superplex, you know, and
he had to be what is at least his late 50s at that point. So
60s, I think. I remember.
Yeah,
I remember in a match, in the match with him, one of the matches we had where we had a double down and we're both, you know, in the ring selling. He had just hit me with something because I was working heel. And so he was like coming up for his fire up spot. And the crowd is chanting, "You still got it." You know, they're doing that whole thing. Right. And he's laying on the mat next to me. And he goes, "I hate when they say that. I hate it. It makes me feel so much older than I am."
Right?
Yeah. And I was just one of those moments where like, cause he cracked me in the ring. Like I had to like roll over because I had a smile on my face when he said that. Yeah. But yeah.
Now, I haven't seen these clashes, but I gotta assume you worked the arm, right? Because I don't think that ever healed right.
Yeah, I know. Right? So that's the thing. I wanted him to have the cast, and he never used the cast. He doesn't do that anymore, or at least he didn't when he was working with us. So he never had the cast. I wanted it really bad. I tagged with Billy Gunn one time. Awesome. And that was fun. That was another like one of those moments where like as a wrestler, you try not to be a mark, right? You try not to like because we're all coworkers, don't mark out for these guys. But like I was in high school in the 90s and I was obsessed with D-Generation X and I was obsessed with the New Age Outlaws. And I pretty regularly used to run around spouting off all of Road Dogg's catchphrases, right? Right. So when I found out that I was going to be tagging with Billy Gunn at a show, I remember I came in that day and like I asked the sound guy, I was like, "Hey, what music do you have us coming out to?" And they're like, "Oh, we're going to do the New Age Outlaws music." And I was like, "Cool." I was like, is it the music where it's already got like Road Dogg's audio on there? And they're like, no, it's like just there's no audio, it's just the music. And I went, okay. And so then I went in the locker room and I met Billy Gunn, you know, and we talked and everything. And we talked about match ideas and, you know, went through all that. And then I was finally like, "Hey, would it be out of line if I did the Road Dogg spiel for the entrance?" You know, the whole, "Oh, you didn't know" nonsense. And he just looks at me with a smirk on his face and he goes, "Yeah, that's cool, but if you mess it up, I'm going to tell Brian, Road Dogg, and you're definitely going to be mocked mercilessly." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Challenge accepted. That's a fair deal." And so then that was amazing, right? Like that music hit and I got to do the "Oh, you didn't know, yo ass better call somebody." And then me and Billy Gunn came out together.
That's awesome.
And it was awesome. It was really cool. We got in the ring and Billy Gunn grabs the mic because a lot of these guys, you know, especially when they're working there, they talk to the crowd and everything because they're like the big guest star. He grabs the mic and he starts talking to everybody, you know, in the crowd before the match starts. And he goes, "No, wait. You can't just do that part. If you're going to do Road Dogg stuff, you got to do all of Road Dogg's stuff." So he hands the mic back to me. And then I did the whole "Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages," and did that whole thing with Billy Gunn. You know, we told the crowd to suck it. And I was like, man, I feel like such a kid right now. This is the craziest thing ever that I got to do that. So that was a really fun experience too. That was awesome. I worked with Tommy Dreamer a little bit.
Oh, wow.
I didn't have a match with Tommy, but I interfered in that match. So because he was working a guy that I was feuding at the time. So my spot was to come in and just wreck that match and attack the guy that I was feuding. So I got to run out and beat up Tommy Dreamer, which was really cool, right? Like that was the extent of it. I ran out and I clobbered him and I grabbed him and I slammed him into the ring post. And then I went into the ring and did my whole thing with the other guy. But one of the things that was really cool about Tommy Dreamer, and I've never really seen a lot of guys, any of the other names do this, is he sat at the monitor in the locker room and watched every single match that night. And then as the guys would come back from their match, he would pull them aside and he would give them pointers and advice about what he just watched in their match. And he was so invested in doing that. And I thought that was so cool to see. I thought that was awesome. He even did the same thing with me. We came backstage and he was like, hey, everything was really great. But when you grabbed me to throw me in the ring post, you took me all the way the other side of the ring. You should have just slammed me into this ring post, because why would I walk all the way across the ring? And, I could have fell over and that would have looked dumb. And it was one of those things where you're like, oh yeah, why didn't I do that? Thanks, Tommy Dreamer. That's little things like that sometimes, right? There's always these weird little things in wrestling that you sometimes you don't think about it and it's obvious. And then so you just need somebody to tell you and it clicks. Oh, that's smart. And that was that. So that's one of the cool takeaways I have from that whole interaction. He was really, really hands-on with the whole show.
You got to show up, punk out Tommy Dreamer, and he gets no revenge.
Right.
I know, right? I know.
That's a good place to be, man. Because if Tommy Dreamer came looking for you, you're going to get hit with
right.
I know. I guess
that'll be a good show, man. That's going to be the best show ever, man. When you're live in your lair and somebody pushes a shopping cart into the room and it's on.
Yes. Bring it on, Tommy. Let's go. You owe me. Oh, man.
There we go. That's our Tommy Dreamer call out. That's the thumbnail.
There we go. Yeah.
Right.
Let's do
Pixel Dan wants Tommy
Get
Dreamer.
me back in the ring. Let's go. Get me back in the ring, Tommy Dreamer. Let's do it.
He wants you, old man.
Maybe don't bring the kids to the Tommy Dreamer match.
Oh, no. ECW.
Right.
Give him a signed kendo stick. Are you kidding me?
Oh,
Dad would be taking him home.
Hey, kids, this is the Sandman. He's Daddy's friend.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Wrestling's a great time. It's awesome.
True. So, Dan, we're coming up on time, but I don't want to let that get away without talking a little bit about your foray into the ciphered word. You've given James Kavanaugh the term noted author, so I can't give that title to you too.
Okay, sure.
James will come for me, Tommy Dreamer style. But you're an author now. You're a published author.
I am. It's still pretty amazing. It still almost doesn't feel real sometimes that I was able to do that. But yes, just in 2020, I released the official guide to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe action figures. The toys of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is what the official title of the book is. Published by Dark Horse, officially licensed by Mattel. And I got the opportunity to write this Bible, basically, chronicling the Masters of the Universe toy line from 1982 through 2019. So it went through the end of the Classics toy line. At the time that I was working on it, I thought I was making a pretty complete book, not knowing what Mattel had planned with Origins and Masterverse and everything that they've done since. But yeah, it was really a passion project. It was something that I personally always wanted to see. And again, shout out to my good friend Val Staples, who runs PowerCon and HeMan.org for many years. And he worked on several of the other Masters of the Universe books that Dark Horse published, like the Art of Masters of the Universe and the mini comics collection. And way back when they first started working on those books, I was already like in his ear saying, if there's ever an opportunity to write a book about the toys, I want to do it. I want to be the guy. I want to tell that story. And it was just one of those things where like, I always just kind of made sure that people knew that that's something I wanted to do. So I got when I got the phone call one day, that was just kind of like hey, is that something you seriously want to do? Because there may be an opportunity here and like you're kind of being pegged for it. And I was just like, yes, absolutely. I want to do it. And then I hung up the phone and immediately I was like, I don't know how to write a book. I don't know how to do any of this. How am I going to figure this out? Right.
And reality set in.
Yeah, reality sank in. But no, it ended up being just this amazing journey because so the book is filled with original photography of every action figure, vehicle, and playset that came out from 82 through 2019. And me and my team did all of this photography. And in order to do that, like I basically had to travel all over the country and meet up with collectors that had things that I could photograph. Because I have a lot of HeMan toys, but I don't have everything. And plus I had to find like mint in box collections, and I had to find loose complete collections, and I had to find the She-Ra collector, and I had to find the New Adventures of He-Man collector, you know, because everybody kind of focuses on different things in collecting, as we've talked about. And that just ended up being the coolest experience I probably have ever had doing this whole thing, because I spent 3 years traveling all over the country, even up into Canada, hanging out at collectors' homes for a weekend at a time and photographing their stuff while, you know, just talking about these things that we love, hearing why they collect, seeing what they focus on. And it was just this amazing experience of getting to connect with this community. And, you know, I always make sure to tell everybody, like, even though like my name is the lead author on this book, like this is a community made book. Like this book would not have been made possible without the community coming together to help me produce something like this. So it was one of the coolest things I've ever experienced. And now I've got this amazing physical item that I can hold that came out of my brain, which is pretty cool. And one of the things I always kind of say that has been really neat about this is like, I've been doing the YouTube thing, obviously, for 15 years. And then obviously producing content has been awesome. And working alongside Mattel via getting review samples and stuff was cool. But this was something that I got to hold in my hands when it was done. It was a physical thing that I made. And it's the first time that I officially got to work on the brand that I have loved my whole life. So it was a really, really cool, just rewarding experience all around. It was awesome.
That is excellent.
Yeah.
I know if I ever approached Hasbro about writing a G.I. Joe book, they'd probably come and burn my apartment down.
Oh no.
I don't know what we did. We were very nice when it was all official at JoeCon. We were always very pleasant. I don't know.
No, it's having worked at Hasbro for a short time, I had the same feeling with the first Transformer thing that I had that had my fingerprint on it, right? Or the first Joe thing. Like that's really something. Like you can be around a brand and be part of the community, be a big part of the community. When you actually get to work with the company that owns it, it's a little different, and it's like, memorable, absolutely.
And because that's permanent now, right? Like my name is there, and that's that means something to me. Like in the sense that like I feel like I'm leaving a true legacy now behind. Like, I'm really bad about like underplaying what I do on YouTube or everything. Like people always tell me that I'm crazy, but like, I don't know, this felt important to me. Like it felt important to actually have my name there and stamped on and affiliated, you know, in some way that I got to actually work on the brand. That was cool. Like in some small aspect, it was nice to actually leave my fingerprint on it. Like you said, like I got to leave something there. And like, I visited Mattel headquarters for the first time ever last year and got to visit the design center. And like they took me into a room, like their museum-ish room, where they have like a bunch of stuff like museum kind of displayed and everything. And they have a section of basically all these the print items that have come out. And my book was there, like in their display. And that was just another thing where I'm like, oh my God, like that is holy cow. That's so cool, you know? That's so cool.
That is very cool, man. It's and of all the people to do it, I'm glad it was you. You know, like
Thank you.
Like I have met some folks in the past who, when they find out that we know one another, they're like, is he really just as happy all the time? It's like, that is no act. That is 0% phony. That is Dan in a nutshell.
It's always what people always want to know that.
Right. There is no lie in the Pixel Dan you see on YouTube.
It's me, man.
I think that's the secret to your success, my friend.
Well, thank you. It's just, it's fun. And if it stops being fun, that's when it's time to stop doing it. I think I don't want to be angry about this stuff. I want to enjoy it. And as long as I'm enjoying it and having fun, I'm going to keep doing it. So, yeah.
Right. Like there have been times where I felt a little burnt out and run down.
Oh, we all get there. Yeah.
I wanted to go on, and then I say something, and Mark says, you better keep going because I'll come and break your knuckles. And so I'm fired up to do a show again.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We all get there, though. I think we all get burned out or, stressed out. And, I even talked about that a little bit earlier, like the YouTube thing, the content creation atmosphere can be very stressful and emotionally draining sometimes. And I absolutely get in my head. I get inside my own head a lot. I'm really bad about like comparing myself to other successful people and like getting down on myself. And I try so hard not to do that, but I think we all do that sometimes a little bit. So it does, we all get there with collecting or with content creation or anything, but like I always find the fun again. I always find it. And that's why I just keep going. That's why I keep doing it.
If you ever need to find focus, man, just when you're doing a show, put your older brother on it, and that tends to put you in your place right away.
Mm-hmm. I'm the oldest in my family. I don't have an older brother.
That's no good at all. Get my shot in on Racktime Rob there. That's all.
Right. Just invite Billy Gunn over to stand between you and the camera.
There we go. Yeah. Look, if you mess up, I'm going to let Brian know. That's all he's got to say to me. Oh, okay. Sorry, Mr. Gunn. Sorry.
Billy Gunn, who looks better now than he did 30 years ago. Come on.
Right? Oh my gosh. He's another guy you don't think about being huge. He's huge. He's so tall and so, he's huge. He towered over me when we worked together. Yeah.
He's every inch of 6'5".
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
At 270. I mean, just
there was an online rumor that was probably all it was, but that as a gag backstage in AEW, they had a ranking of best physiques in the company, and they would update it over time. And it pretty much was just a printout with Billy Gunn #1 on it. And then they would fill out the rest. but
that sounds accurate.
It was true, right?
Yeah.
They were mad. Some of the younger guys were mad about it, but they couldn't do anything about it.
Right. Go be that guy for 35 years. Go ahead.
Right? Yeah.
Wait. So Dan, as we pull this train into the station, what have we missed? What have we not touched base on that you have to get out there to this and any other audience that might tune in just to see you?
Well, I'm working on a new book, which is awesome. I honestly, it's still a little up in the air on when exactly pre-orders start, but by the time this show comes out, they might have started. So it's hard for me to like officially talk about it, but fair. If you know the things that I like, I think you can guess what the second book is about. So
right,
Ninja Force.
Shadow Ninja
Force. Yes, Shadow Ninjas. So yeah, that's what I've been working on now. That's kind of taken up a lot of my time, and I've actually been traveling around doing a lot of photography again for the past 2 years. So yeah, that's coming together. I'm pretty excited about that.
So
sorry, go ahead.
If somebody was interested in purchasing your first book, what's the title of it and where would they go?
The title is The Toys of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It's published by Dark Horse, which actually means it's very easy to purchase. It's available on Amazon. It's available at Barnes & Noble. It's available through your local comic book store. So go support your local comic shops and have them order it for you there. Or if you catch me at a convention, you want to buy it from me directly, I typically bring books with me when I come to the shows and I do signings and stuff. So you can stay tuned for my schedule. I usually release my convention schedule early in the year. And yeah, you can come get it that way too.
You're under the sign that says Toy Enthusiast.
Toy Enthusiast. That's right. Well, now I can add author to that now, so it sounds a little cooler. Like
and wrestler. Come on now.
Yeah, pro wrestler. Yeah, that's right.
Anyways, Dan, you were before I cut you off for schlock. What else were you saying there?
Otherwise, I was just going to say, you can find me on YouTube just by searching Pixel Dan. And I'm also available on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, all under the same thing, at Pixel Dan. So it's pretty easy to find me just by searching my name. If you're interested in toy reviews and toy hunts and toy history and all that stuff. But I mean, like, it's a lot of He-Man and Ninja Turtles if you guys are into that sort of thing. But I've been introducing a lot of the G.I. Joe stuff too lately, if you're into the 90s stuff. So
yeah, well, for the entire Joe community, let me be the first to welcome you home.
Oh, well, thank you.
Right. It took you a while, but you've somehow got your way back to the best.
There you go.
I accept.
you just got called up, man.
Right.
I love it. I got called up to the big leagues.
Like the Indies, and here you are in the big leagues at last. At 40.
Yes, I knew it would pay off eventually.
15 online, and finally the calling.
Somehow, G.I. Joe is your Becky Lynch.
Right.
Oh, hey, okay, that's. I like that. That's good.
There you go.
Rolling them into the guardrail and then a firm handshake. It's
it.
Poetry is what it is. It's poetry.
I love
Dan,
it.
you want to shout out for anybody before we go?
I guess so. So yeah, let me just shout out like everybody in the Joe community this year that has actually been embracing this whole crazy journey I've been on, because it's been a lot of fun. So many of you guys at various toy shows and everything, conventions this year, who have all been encouraging me to pursue this. Thanks. This has been a lot of fun, seriously. And I love getting to experience this. Like I said, I'm obviously an outsider, so I felt a little bit like an outsider. I didn't want to come in and be like, hey, it's me, but like, it's been really cool. Like how welcoming everybody in the community has been, and the toy communities always make this thing so much fun. So that's been great.
I think it was probably a smart move not to go to the conventions with your road dog entrance.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, you didn't know?
No.
Pixel Dan's here to buy all the Joes. Let's go. Where my ninjas at?
Right.
Show me the neons.
Pixel Dan works face. Spencer Powers works heel.
That's
okay,
right. Yeah, that's right.
Fair
that's
enough.
Right.
Anybody else, Dan? Anybody else we shouting out to?
Yes. I talked about the book earlier, the Masters of the Universe book. So obviously, shout out to my good friend Val Staples, who was my partner on that book. Couldn't have done it without him. But also, so many other people worked on that book too. I had lots of help with photography and writing, and all those community people who helped me put that together. And same kind of shout out goes for everybody that's currently helping me right now with my new book project. Just because I love the community aspect of all this. I love that we can all come together to make something like this exist. And I'm just so thankful that everybody is so willing to help me do stuff like that.
Awesome. That is good to hear. Dan's wife and kids left out of shout outs.
Oh, well, I mean, I definitely couldn't do like Look, I shout out Christina all the time. I love my wife. She is the most supportive person to this whole thing. I could not do this without her. She knows that, but I'm happy to say that all the time.
Come on, man. I've actually met your wife a couple times. I had to get you in
I know. Yeah, she travels with me a lot to these shows. I definitely couldn't keep my head on straight at most of these conventions if she wasn't there helping me run these booths and stuff. So yeah, she's the best.
And with that, we will close this chapter of the Pixel Dan experience. Of course, we expect that you will be back with us to plug the Ninja Force book once it is released.
Yeah. Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll be here. Absolutely. I'll sell 10 copies of that.
You said 10 copies of that to Justin Bell alone. That's all.
That's right.
Oh man.
But Dan, thanks so much for your time. For Pixel Dan Early, for the Honcho Mark Weber. Thanks for joining us here on What's on Joe Mind Special Edition 90. Happy New Year to everybody. Let us be the last to wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, festive holiday season, whatever you may celebrate. And that's it for now. We'll catch you next, I guess it'll be next Tuesday, for another edition of the What's on Joe Mind team stream here in the friendly confines. Have a good rest of the week. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
You got a lot going on up there, Mike. That's not a bad thing.
No, I
Showing off now.
look, man, it's all I have going for me. It's all I have going for me. I don't look. People don't say I look good for my age. They just say I look younger than I actually am. So they think I'm under 40 and a complete wreck, and I'll take that at this point.
Okay.
Gotta take your wins where you can, right?
Absolutely.